It was supposed to be the perfect surprise, a secret trip to Paris for my husband's 40th birthday. I had the vintage champagne, the impossible-to-get dinner reservations, and a heart full of love for the man I'd built my life with. But when I stepped onto his gleaming private jet, the surprise was mine. Another woman was there waiting for him, and she was wearing my pajamas. This isn't just a story about infidelity, it's about how the perfect marriage can be the most elaborate lie of all. Life for Elellanena Vance was a masterpiece of curated perfection. Their tri-level penthouse overlooking Central Park was a testament to quiet, astronomical wealth, with floor-to-ceiling windows that drank in the New York City skyline. Every surface was immaculate, every piece of art was significant, and every moment was seemingly effortless. Her husband, Richard Vance, was the architect of this life. A titan of the tech industry, his company, Aura Navigations, had revolutionized global logistics with its predictive AI. He was handsome, disarmingly charming, and to the outside world, utterly devoted to his wife and their 9-year-old son, Leo. Elellanena played her part with grace. She was the statuesque, intelligent wife who chaired the right charities, hosted the most sought-after dinner parties, and raised a thoughtful, well-adjusted child. She had degrees in architecture from both Yale and Cambridge, a career she'd lovingly placed on hold to build a family and support Richard's meteoric rise. She didn't see it as a sacrifice, she saw it as a partnership. They were a team. The week of Richard's 40th birthday was the pinnacle of her planning. She'd spent months orchestrating the ultimate surprise. He thought they were having a quiet dinner at home with a few family members. In reality, Eleanor had arranged for his prized Gulfstream G650ER to be waiting at Teterboro Airport, ready to whisk them away to Paris for a week of unadulterated romance. The final piece of her plan fell into place on Tuesday afternoon. She'd picked up a special gift for their Parisian hotel suite, a pair of exquisitely hand-stitched silk pajamas from a small boutique in Milan she'd discovered on their honeymoon. They were a deep sapphire blue, the color of the evening sky over Lake Como, where he'd proposed. They weren't just pajamas, they were a symbol, a thread connecting their past to their future. She'd had them delivered directly to the jet by a trusted courier that morning, along with a case of Dom Perignon Rosé 2008 and Richard's favorite cashmere travel blanket. Everything was set. "You're heading out, Mom?" Leo asked, looking up from his homework at the kitchen's marble island. Elellanena bent down to kiss his forehead, her heart swelling. He had Richard's bright, inquisitive eyes, but her own thoughtful nature. "I am my love. I'm going to go surprise Dad for his birthday. The babysitter will be here any minute, and Nonna is picking you up for school in the morning." "Is it the Paris surprise?" he whispered conspiratorially. Eleanor's perfectly composed face broke into a genuine, radiant smile. Leo was the one person she'd let in on the secret. "It is. You think he'll like it? He's gonna love it." Leo beamed. "Can you bring me back a croissant? A real one?" "I will bring you back an entire bakery of real ones," she promised, hugging him tightly. Her driver, a stoic man named Frank, who had been with the family for years, was waiting downstairs. The drive to the private airfield in New Jersey was filled with a giddy, nervous energy. Elellanena smoothed the fabric of her tailored trench coat, her mind racing ahead to the moment she would see Richard's face. He'd be speechless. He worked so relentlessly, always pushing for the next deal, the next innovation. He deserved this. They deserved this. As the car pulled up to the discreet entrance of the private hangar, Elellanena could see the sleek white fuselage of the Gulfstream, its powerful engines glinting under the afternoon sun. The call letters N40RV for Richard Vance's 40th were painted elegantly near the tail. "I'll handle your luggage," Mrs. Vance Frank said, opening her door. "Thank you, Frank. I'm going to go on ahead. I can't wait to see the look on his face." She walked toward the jet, the quiet hum of the auxiliary power unit filling the air. The ground crew, who knew her well, gave her a respectful nod as she approached the retractable stairs. This was it, the culmination of months of love and planning. She imagined Richard inside, perhaps taking a pre-flight call, completely unaware that his world was about to be filled with champagne and Parisian moonlight. Taking a deep breath, her heart thrumming with anticipation, she ascended the steps and pushed open the heavy insulated door of the cabin. And then her world stopped. The cabin, usually kept in a state of pristine, masculine minimalism, smelled faintly of a perfume she didn't recognize. Something overly sweet, like gardenias and regret. A half-empty flute of champagne sat on the polished mahogany bar, a smear of pale pink lipstick on its rim. And there, curled up on the plush cream-colored sofa, was a young woman. She couldn't have been more than 25, with a cascade of dark hair and a face that was trying to arrange itself into an expression of surprise, but landed somewhere closer to panic. But it wasn't the woman herself that caused the air to be sucked from Eleanor's lungs, that made her vision tunnel and her ears ring with a deafening roar. It was what she was wearing, the deep sapphire blue silk, the delicate hand-stitching, the pajamas that were meant to symbolize a decade of love and partnership. The mistress was wearing her pajamas. For a long moment, no one moved. The three of them were frozen in a tableau of domestic horror 1,000 feet above the ground, in spirit, if not in fact. Eleanor stood in the doorway, her hands still on the heavy door, her knuckles white. The young woman on the sofa, Isabella, scrambled to sit up, the sapphire silk pooling around her slender frame. And from the cockpit, alerted by the change in pressure and the sudden chilling silence, Richard appeared. He saw Eleanor first. His face, usually a confident mask of easy charm, collapsed. Panic, raw and undisguised, flashed in his eyes before he quickly tried to bury it under a veneer of confusion. "Eleanor, what are you doing here? I thought you were at home." The question was so absurd, so insulting in its attempt at normalcy, that it nearly broke through Eleanor's shock. Her gaze flickered from Richard's pale face to the woman Isabella, who was now clutching a cashmere pillow to her chest, as if it could somehow make her and the stolen pajamas invisible. "Happy birthday, Richard," Eleanor said. Her voice was terrifyingly calm, a thin sheet of ice over a raging Arctic sea. Every ounce of her breeding, every lesson in composure she had ever learned, was being called upon to simply keep her standing upright. Richard took a step forward, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Honey, this isn't what it looks like." It was the most pathetic, most cliched line in the history of marital betrayal, and hearing it from his lips felt like a physical blow. "It isn't." Eleanor's eyes finally locked onto Isabella's. She took in the girl's youth, the frightened, defiant tilt of her chin. She was beautiful in a way that was both common and potent, but all Eleanor could see was the color of her pajamas, her gift, her symbol, violated. "Who is she, Richard?" Eleanor asked, her voice still quiet, but now laced with steel. This is Isabella. She's an intern from the design department," he stammered, his eyes darting between the two women. We were flying to the conference in Chicago a day early, a last-minute strategy session." The lie was so clumsy, so hastily constructed, that it was almost pitiful. A strategy session in pajamas, Eleanor's mind, sharp and analytical even in its agony, began cataloguing the details. The pink lipstick on the champagne flute, the single duffel bag near the galley, a brand she didn't recognize, the way Isabella refused to meet her eyes. An intern, Eleanor repeated, tasting the word like poison. I see. And as Aura Navigations now provide a company uniform of $1,000 pajamas for its interns, specifically the ones I had delivered to this plane this morning, the direct hit landed. Richard flinched as if he'd been struck. Isabella's face went from pale to ghostly white. She finally looked at Eleanor, and in her eyes, Eleanor saw a flicker of something unexpected, not just fear, but a dawning horror. The girl hadn't known. She hadn't known the significance of the silk she was wearing. To her, it was just a beautiful gift from a rich man. She didn't realize she was draped in the shroud of a marriage. I didn't know, Isabella whispered, her voice trembling. He told me they were for me. He tells a lot of stories, Eleanor replied, her gaze shifting back to her husband. The shock was beginning to recede, replaced by a cold, clarifying rage. It was an out-of-body experience. She was watching herself in a film, the wronged wife, playing her part with devastating precision. Eleanor, please, Richard begged, taking another step closer. Let's not do this here. Let's go home. We can talk about this. Here she echoed, a humorless laugh escaping her lips. You mean in your flying love nest, on the jet I helped you choose for the company I helped you build, on the way to a romantic trip I planned for your birthday? Her voice finally rose, cracking with the weight of her shredded heart. There is no here anymore, Richard. You've burned it all to the ground. She wanted to scream, to launch herself at him, to tear the expensive suit from his body, to rip the silk from the girl's skin. She wanted to shatter the champagne flutes and claw at the polished mahogany until it splintered. But she did none of those things. Her rage was too deep, too profound for such a messy release. It was a dense, heavy thing settling in her bones. She looked at him one last time, seeing not the man she loved, but a stranger, a weak, deceitful stranger who had taken her love, her loyalty, and her intellect and used them to build a world where he could have everything, and she apparently was entitled to nothing but the role she played. Without another word, she turned her back on them. She walked down the steps of the Gulf Stream, each step steady and deliberate. She did not run. She did not stumble. She walked with the cold, hard grace of a queen, leaving a kingdom that had proven unworthy of her rule. She reached the bottom of the stairs and kept walking, her eyes fixed on the distant hangar door. She could feel Richard's presence behind her, having followed her to the top of the stairs. "Eleanor, Ellie, wait," he called out, his voice laced with a desperation that was no longer about getting caught, but about realizing the magnitude of what he had just lost. She didn't turn around. She didn't even slow down. Frank saw her coming, his professional demeanor cracking for just a second as he took in her pale, rigid face. He opened the car door without a word. She slid inside, the plush leather a cold comfort. As the car pulled away, she finally allowed herself to look back. Through the tinted window, she saw the silhouette of her husband, standing helplessly on the tarmac, a small, pathetic figure against the gleaming, monolithic jet that was supposed to have been their chariot to paradise. The dream wasn't just dead, it had been a mirage all along. The first 24 hours were a blur of managed chaos. Eleanor did not go back to the penthouse. The thought of sleeping in their bed, of walking through rooms pregnant with a decade of shared memories that now felt like fiction, was unbearable. Instead, she had Frank drive her to the Carlisle a bastion of old New York discretion. She checked into a suite under her maiden name, a name she hadn't used in 10 years, Eleanor Peterson. It felt both foreign and like a homecoming. Her phone was a relentless torrent of digital pleading. "Richard, Eleanor, please pick up. We need to talk." "Richard, I am so sorry. You don't understand the whole story." "Richard, I'm canceling the trip. I'm sending her home. Please just tell me where you are." "Richard, don't do this, Ellie. Think about Leo." The mention of their son was a low blow, and it was the one that finally made her act. She sent him a single terse message: "Do not contact me again. All communication will go through my lawyer. I will speak to Leo at his regular time tonight. You will not poison him against me." Her next call was to Genevieve O'Malley, the most fearsome divorce attorney in Manhattan. Genevieve was a shark in a Chanel suit, a woman who operated on black coffee and the tears of unfaithful husbands. "Genevieve, it's Elellanena Vance," she said, her voice hoarse when the lawyer picked up. Eleanor, Genevieve's voice, was warm but professional. "It's been a while since the benefit. Is everything all right?" "No," Eleanor said flatly. "I need to retain your services. My husband. There's another woman." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "I see," Genevieve said, her tone shifting instantly from social acquaintance to legal counsel. "Where are you now? Are you safe?" "The Carlisle. And I'm fine. Just shattered." "All right, Eleanor. Here's what you're going to do. Don't speak to him. Don't reply to any messages. Don't talk to any mutual friends. We are going into a complete communications lockdown. I'm sending over my initial retainer agreement electronically. Sign it. We'll meet first thing in the morning. And Eleanor, don't make any decisions based on emotion. Right now, we operate on strategy and strategy alone." Hanging up, Eleanor felt a sliver of control return. This was a process. It had steps. It could be managed. Later that evening, she video-called Leo. Her face, meticulously composed, appeared on his tablet screen. "Mom, did you surprise Dad?" he asked, his face alight with innocence. Eleanor's heart fractured. "I did, my love. It was a huge surprise. But you know what, Daddy has a very important work thing that came up suddenly in Chicago, so we had to postpone the Paris trip." "Oh," Leo's face fell. "So you're not in Paris?" "Not yet," she said, forcing a bright smile. "But I promise we'll go soon and we'll take you with us. How does that sound?" The lie tasted like ash in her mouth, but it was a necessary shield for his innocence. After the call, she sat in the silent, opulent hotel suite and finally let the facade crumble. The silent scream she'd suppressed on the jet clawed its way out, but it was soundless, a racking, convulsive grief that shook her entire body. It wasn't just about the affair. It was the pajamas. It was the sheer, breathtaking arrogance of it. To not only betray her, but to use a symbol of their intimacy as a casual gift for his mistress. It felt like more than just careless infidelity. It felt pointed. It felt like erasure. The next morning, in Genevieve's the stark minimalist office overlooking the East River, the reality of her situation came into sharp focus. "Aura Navigations is a privately held company," Genevieve said, tapping her pen on a thick file she'd already had her team assemble. "Richard owns 85%. The other 15% is held by early-stage investors. Your name is on none of the corporate paperwork. You signed a prenuptial agreement." Eleanor nodded numbly. "It was standard. I had my own career then. We were in love. It felt unromantic to fight it." "Unromantic is how they get you," Genevieve said, not unkindly. "The prenup is ironclad regarding the company itself. You're entitled to half the value of all marital assets, the penthouse, the Hamptons house, the art, the liquid accounts, from the date of marriage. But the company's value, his 85% stake, is protected. He'll have to buy you out of your share of the homes, of course. It will be a very, very generous settlement. You'll never have to worry about money again. I'm not worried about money, Elena said quietly. I'm worried about the fact that my entire life has been a lie. They often are, Genevieve stated, but we can make him pay for it. The infidelity clause in your prenup is specific. If proof of adultery can be established, it triggers a 25% penalty on the total settlement amount. He'll fight it. He'll claim the girl in the pajamas was just a colleague. We'll have to prove it. A bitter smile touched Eleanor's lips. She wasn't just a colleague. He was flying her somewhere. And the pajamas? The pajamas are a beautiful theatrical detail, Genevieve cut in, but in court, they're circumstantial. We need something more concrete. Credit card statements, hotel bookings, emails, text messages, a confession. That afternoon, needing a distraction, Eleanor began the painful but necessary process of untangling her life from Richard's. She started with their shared digital accounts, banking utilities, travel profiles. It was mundane, soul-crushing work. She logged into the central server for their home network, needing to download personal financial documents for Genevieve. The server was organized with Richard's typical obsessive precision. Folders for finances, household management, Leo's school travel, and one simply labeled Aura. Out of a morbid curiosity, she clicked on it. It was mostly corporate reports, press releases, things she'd seen before, but deep within the file structure she found a password-protected subfolder named Genesis. She tried the usual passwords, their anniversary, Leo's birthday, the name of their first dog. Nothing. Frowning, she stared at the file name. Genesis. The beginning. An idea sparked. Richard was a brilliant coder, but he was also a creature of habit. Before Aura, his first failed startup, was an architectural software company. He'd used a specific encryption algorithm he was very proud of. Eleanor, with her architectural background, had helped him design the user interface. She remembered the master key sequence. On a long shot, she entered the complex alphanumeric string. The folder opened. Inside were not corporate documents, but something else entirely. Financial projections, wire transfers to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands under a shell corporation she'd never heard of, and a series of complex technical schematics. She didn't understand the financial data, but the schematics made the hairs on her arms stand up. They were blueprints, but they weren't for a building. They were for a software architecture, and they looked familiar, terribly, sickeningly familiar. She downloaded the encrypted file to a secure thumb drive, a cold dread seeping into her veins that was entirely separate from the pain of Richard's personal betrayal. This felt different. This felt dangerous. This wasn't just the anatomy of an affair. It was the anatomy of a far greater lie. The encrypted file was a ghost. It haunted her for the next 2 days. She sat in her hotel suite, the city lights twinkling below, and stared at the small silver thumb drive on the desk. Every instinct told her that whatever was on that drive was more significant than a tawdry affair. The panic in Richard's eyes on the jet, it wasn't just the fear of a husband being caught. It was the terror of a king whose crown was about to slip. Genevieve's advice echoed in her head: strategy, not emotion. She needed to understand what she was looking at. Her past life, the one before Richard, came rushing back to her. Before she was Mrs. Vance, she was Eleanor Peterson, a promising young architect whose graduate thesis at Yale had been a groundbreaking piece of theoretical design. It wasn't about a building, It was about a system. She had designed a predictive modeling software for urban planning, a program that could analyze traffic logistics, energy consumption, and human movement to create hyper-efficient, self-regulating smart cities. She had called the project Helios, after the all-seeing Greek god of the sun. It was ambitious, brilliant, and ultimately purely academic. She'd met Richard around the same time. He'd been fascinated by it, spending hours with her in the university library, poring over her code and her diagrams. He'd called her a visionary. With a trembling hand, she plugged the thumb drive into her laptop. The schematics filled the screen. The flow charts, the data architecture, the core logic loops, it was all there. It wasn't an exact copy of her Helios project, but it was its direct descendant. The core structure was identical, just repurposed. Her dream of creating efficient cities had been twisted and repackaged to create efficient global shipping routes. The blood drained from her face. Aura Navigations, Richard's billion-dollar empire, the genius predictive AI that had made him a legend in the tech world. It wasn't his genius, it was hers. He hadn't just stolen her heart, he had stolen her mind. He had taken her most brilliant idea, the one she'd poured her soul into, and claimed it as his own. The entire foundation of their life, the penthouse, the jet, the charity balls, the very money he was using to fly his mistress around the world, it was all built on a bedrock of intellectual theft. Her theft. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it dwarfed the image of Isabella in her pajamas. The affair was a symptom. This was the disease. Her entire 10-year marriage suddenly reframed itself in her mind. His early encouragement of her career, followed by the gentle persuasion to put it on hold. "You're too brilliant for these small firms, Ellie. Wait for the right project. We need you to build our family right now." He hadn't been protecting her. He had been sidelining her. He had put his greatest threat on the bench, adorning her in designer clothes and calling her his queen, all while he ruled a kingdom he had stolen from her. The rage that followed was nothing like the hot, painful anger of the affair. This was a glacial, tectonic fury. It was the anger of an artist whose masterpiece had been stolen and defaced. She knew she needed proof, undeniable proof, that would stand up in a court of law, not just in the court of her own conviction. The schematics were a smoking gun, but she needed to tie them directly to her original work. Her thesis files were on an old hard drive, stored in the climate-controlled archive of their country home in Connecticut. She couldn't go there herself. Richard might be there, or the staff would report her presence. She needed an ally. She thought back to her Yale days, to her project partner on Helios, a quiet, fiercely intelligent coder named Adam Finch. Adam was the one who had helped her translate her architectural concepts into functional code. They had lost touch after she married Richard, who had always been vaguely dismissive of him. A quick search online found him. He wasn't at a flashy tech giant. He was a professor of computer science at MIT. Perfect. She called him. His voice was hesitant, at first surprised to hear from her after a decade. Eleanor Peterson. Wow, it's been a long time. It has Adam. I'm sorry for that, she said, her voice steady. Listen, I need your help. It's a matter of the utmost importance, and it requires absolute discretion. She explained the situation carefully, omitting the salacious details of the affair. She framed it as a corporate due diligence issue. She was reviewing some of her husband's company's foundational technology and had noticed some troubling similarities to their old project, Aura Navigations. Adam said, a note of awe in his voice. That's Richard's company, right? The man is a legend. That predictive logistics AI is revolutionary. That's what they say, Lenore replied dryly. I'm sending you two encrypted files. One is a schematic from Aura's server. The other is a link to my old thesis drive. I need you to do a comparative analysis. I need you to tell me if the core architecture of Aura's AI could exist without the foundational code of Helios. There was a long silence on the line as the weight of her request settled. This wasn't just an academic exercise. She was asking him to potentially detonate a bomb under one of the tech world's most celebrated companies. Eleanor, what are you asking me to do? I'm asking you to look at the code, Adam, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. You and I are the only two people on Earth who know what the original Helios DNA looks like. I need to know if I'm crazy or if my husband built his empire on a lie. Give me 48 hours, Adam said, his voice now serious. And Eleanor, be careful. While she waited, Genevieve called with an update. We've got his credit card statements, the lawyer said, her voice grim. He's been funding a life for her. An apartment in the West Village, shopping sprees on Fifth Avenue, and 2 first-class tickets to Paris booked 2 months ago. His flight to Chicago was a lie. He was taking her on your trip, Eleanor. A few months ago, that news would have crippled her. Now, it was just data. It was fuel for the engine of her cold fury. And the girl Eleanor asked, Isabella, who Isabella Rossi, 26. She has a BFA in painting from RISD. She's not an intern. Aura Navigations sponsored her art showcase last spring. It seems Richard became her personal patron, a struggling artist, a young woman with dreams likely dazzled by a powerful, wealthy man who promised to make them come true. Eleanor almost felt a pang of pity for her, another pawn in Richard's game. The pieces were clicking into place. The affair, the lies, the money. It was all a frantic effort to maintain the grand illusion. Richard wasn't just protecting his marriage, he was protecting his fraudulent legacy. He wasn't just a cheating husband. He was a world-class con man. And the 48-hour deadline for Adam's verdict felt like a countdown timer on a bomb of his own making. The email from Adam arrived at 2:17 a.m. on a Thursday. Eleanor had been awake, pacing the confines of her hotel suite like a caged panther. The single line of the email subject was all she needed to see. Subject, it's a direct copy. Her breath caught in her throat. She clicked open the email. Adam's report was methodical, clinical, and absolutely damning. He had broken down the core algorithms side by side. He highlighted entire sections of code from her Helios project that had been lifted with only superficial changes to variable names and comments, and planted directly into the heart of the Aura OS. He traced the evolution, showing how her concepts of urban traffic flow were mirrored exactly in Aura's models for tracking container ships and freight trucks. He concluded his report with a personal note, Eleanor, this is not an inspiration. It is a replication. The foundational logic, the predictive modeling engine, the very soul of the Aura AI, it's Helios. Without your thesis, Aura Navigations, as it exists today, would be impossible. He didn't just build on your idea, he stole the whole damn blueprint. I'm sorry. Reading the words, Eleanor felt no triumph, only a profound hollowing emptiness. The ghost in the machine had a name, and it was hers. For 10 years, she had lived as a footnote in her own life story. She forwarded the entire report to Genevieve with a simple message, forget the infidelity clause. We have bigger problems. Call me at 8 a.m. The meeting in Genevieve's office that morning was electric. The air crackled with a new, far more potent energy. The divorce case had just escalated from a high-stakes domestic dispute to a potential corporate thermonuclear event. Genevieve, a woman not easily impressed, stared at Adam's report on her screen, her expression grim. My God, Eleanor. If this is true, this isn't just grounds for a better settlement. This is fraud on a scale that's hard to comprehend. It could invalidate his patents. It could expose the company to shareholder lawsuits. It could destroy him entirely. He destroyed me first, Eleanor said, her voice devoid of emotion. He took my work, my passion, and built a cage for me with it. He called me his queen while sitting on a stolen throne. What do you want to do? Genevieve asked, her gaze sharp and focused. This was no longer just about the law. It was about justice. We have two paths. Path A. We use this as leverage. We go to him quietly, show him what we have, and negotiate a settlement that gives you not just half the assets, but a significant stake in the company he stole from you. It's quiet, it's clean, and you walk away with generational wealth and a piece of your legacy back. Path B, she continued, leaning forward, is scorched earth. We file a lawsuit that includes intellectual property theft. We make Adam's report public. We go to the press. It will be a brutal public and very, very ugly fight. Aura's stock, even private, would be worthless overnight. His reputation would be incinerated, but yours would be dragged through the mud with it. They will paint you as a bitter, vengeful wife. It will be a war. Eleanor thought of Leo. She thought of the life he knew, the stability he cherished. A public war would scar him irrevocably. But then she thought of Richard, of his casual cruelty, of the breathtaking arrogance of it all. To let him get away with it, to let him continue to be celebrated as a visionary, while she silently cashed a check, felt like a second violation. There's a third path, Eleanor said slowly, an idea forming in her mind, cold and clear as a diamond. My path. Before she could elaborate, her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. She ignored it. It buzzed again. On the third buzz, she glanced at the screen. A text message had come through from the same number. This is Isabella Rossi. I know you have no reason to speak to me, but I think you should. Richard is a liar, but maybe not in the way you think. He's in trouble, real trouble, and he's going to try and blame me for all of it. Please meet me. Eleanor showed the message to Genevieve, whose eyebrows shot up. A snake offering to help you fight a bigger snake, the lawyer mused. This could be a trap, or it could be an opportunity. I'll meet her. Eleanor decided instantly. I need to hear what she has to say. I need to see all the pieces on the board before I make my next move. The meeting was set for a neutral location, a quiet corner table in the atrium of the Frick collection, surrounded by priceless art and hushed whispers. Eleanor arrived first, choosing a seat with a clear view of the entrance. Isabella Rossi arrived looking nothing like the terrified girl on the jet. She wore a simple black dress, her dark hair was pulled back, and her face was pale but determined. She looked like a young woman who had seen her life flash before her eyes and had come out the other side with a grim new understanding of the world. Thank you for meeting me, Isabella said, her voice low and steady. She didn't offer an apology. She seemed to know it would be worthless. Why did you contact me? Eleanor asked, her tone flat. Because I'm not the person you think I am. Isabella began, her hands clenched in her lap. Yes, I was having an affair with your husband. It was a mistake, and it was a weakness I will regret for the rest of my life. He was my patron. He funded my gallery show. He made me feel like I was a real artist. I was naive, and I let myself believe his lies. What lies? That his marriage was over, that you were living separate lives, the usual garbage, she said with a flash of self-disgust. But that's not the real lie. The real lie is about the company. Elena remained silent, her expression unreadable. For the past 6 months, he's been different. Isabella continued, leaning closer. Paranoid, desperate. He's been moving money. Large sums of money to offshore accounts. He told me it was for a special project, a contingency plan. He made me the sole signatory on one of the accounts. He said it was a way to protect me, to give me a future if everything went wrong. Elena's mind flashed to the Genesis folder. The offshore shell corporation. I didn't understand, not really, Isabella said, her voice trembling slightly. Until that day on the jet. When you walked in, the look on his face, it wasn't just guilt, it was sheer terror. After you left, he fell apart. He kept saying, "She's going to find out. She's the only one who can figure it out." He wasn't talking about the affair. He was talking about something else. He was talking about the company's origin, Elena stated, watching the girl's reaction. Isabella's eyes widened in confirmation. 2 nights ago, he came to my apartment. He was frantic. He told me that if anyone started asking questions about Aura's finances or its history, that I was to say that I was the one blackmailing him. He had cooked the books to make it look like the money he moved was hush money to me. He was creating a story where I was the villain, a greedy mistress who threatened to expose a simple affair, and he paid me off to protect his family. He was going to sacrifice me to hide his real secret. The audacity of it was breathtaking. Richard was planning to not only destroy her life, but to use his mistress as a human shield, painting her as a blackmailer, to cover his financial tracks and the original sin of his intellectual property theft. He stole the company's core technology, Elena said, deciding to lay one of her own cards on the table. From me. Isabella stared at her, a wave of dawning comprehension on her face. It all clicked into place. Richard's paranoia, his desperation, his mention that Eleanor was the only one who could figure it out. "So the money?" Isabella whispered. "It's not blackmail payments, it's his escape fund. He was getting ready to run." "Yes," Eleanor said, "and he was going to leave you holding the bag, branded as an extortionist." A long silence fell between them. The 2 women, the wife and the mistress, sat in the quiet atrium, bound by the deceit of the same man. They were not friends and never could be. But in that moment, they were allies, united against a common enemy. "He has a hard copy of his Genesis folder," Isabella said suddenly. "The real financials, the transfer records. He keeps it in the floor safe in his home office. The code is Leo's birthday." Eleanor looked at Isabella, a new level of respect in her eyes. The girl had just handed her the keys to the kingdom, or rather the key to its destruction. "Why are you telling me this?" Eleanor asked quietly. "Because he was going to destroy my life to save his own." Isabella replied, a hard glint in her eye. "He underestimated me. I think he underestimated you too. I don't want your money. I don't want your forgiveness. I just want him to not get away with it. I want my name back." Eleanor nodded slowly. "He will not get away with it." She left the Frick collection not as a victim, but as a general on the verge of battle, armed with the enemy's battle plans. The third path was now clear. It wasn't just about leverage or revenge. It was about reclamation. The confrontation was staged on her terms. Eleanor sent one final message through Genevieve. "Richard, I will meet you at the penthouse tomorrow at 4 p.m. Come alone. We have things to discuss regarding our son and the terms of our separation. If you do not show, my next call is to the New York Times. She knew he would be there. The threat of public exposure was the only language he truly understood. Eleanor arrived at the penthouse an hour early. Walking into the home she had shared with him was like stepping into a museum of her own life. Everything was exactly as she'd left it, but the meaning had been stripped from it all. The family photos on the mantelpiece felt like staged propaganda. The expensive art felt like the spoils of a silent war. She walked directly to his home office. It was a sleek, modern room, paneled in dark wood, with a panoramic view of the city he believed he had conquered. Using the code Isabella had given her Leo's birthday, she opened the floor safe. Inside, just as Isabella had said, was a leather-bound folio. She opened it. It was all there. The hard copies of the wire transfers, the deeds to the shell corporations, the unadulterated financial records that showed a man systematically siphoning funds from his own company in preparation for a collapse or an escape. This was the final piece of ammunition she needed. She sat behind his large, imposing desk, and waited. Richard arrived precisely at 4 o'clock. He looked haggard. The easy charm was gone, replaced by a deep-set weariness and a palpable fear. He entered the office and stopped short when he saw her sitting in his chair, the open folio on the desk in front of her. His eyes darted from her face to the folio, and in that instant, he knew that she knew everything. "Eleanor," he started, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Don't," she said, her voice calm and cold as a winter morning. "Don't speak. You've said enough. For the next few minutes, you are going to listen." He sank into one of the visitors' chairs, his body deflating as if the strings holding him upright had been cut. "I know about Isabella," she began, "and the apartment and the trip to Paris you were planning to take with her. I know about the lies you told her and the lies you told me. That on its own would have been enough. Our marriage is over. That is not up for debate." He flinched but remained silent. "But I have to admit, Richard," she continued, leaning forward, "I was almost impressed. The sheer scale of your deceit is in its own way a work of art. Because it was never just about the affair, was it? That was just a messy, pathetic distraction from the real secret." She slid Adam's report across the polished surface of the desk. "I know about Helios." The name, a ghost from their shared past, hung in the air between them. Richard visibly paled, a tremor running through his hands. This was the blow he had been dreading. "And I know about this," she said, tapping the leather folio. "The offshore accounts, the escape plan, the little narrative you were building to frame your mistress as a blackmailer to cover your tracks when it all came crashing down." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. "You didn't just cheat on me, Richard. You erased me. You took my intellect, my most innovative idea, and you built an empire on it. You let the world call you a genius for my work. You put me on a pedestal and called me your queen, but it was in a kingdom you stole from me. You didn't want a partner. You wanted a beautiful, intelligent hood ornament for your stolen car." Tears streamed down Richard's face now. Not tears of remorse, she realized, but tears of self-pity. The tears of a man who had been caught. "I was under so much pressure," he finally choked out. "The investors, the expectations. I was failing Ellie. My first startup was a disaster. I was terrified of being a nobody again. Your Helios project, it was so brilliant. I just wanted to borrow a piece of it. It started small, and then it snowballed. I always meant to tell you. No, you didn't, Elena said, turning to face him, her eyes merciless. You never would have told me. You would have let me live my entire life as a bystander to my own success. She walked back to the desk and laid out her terms. It was the third path. Not quiet leverage, not scorched earth, but a hostile takeover of her own life. Here is what is going to happen, she said, her voice leaving no room for negotiation. You are going to transfer 70% of your shares in Aura Navigations to me, making me the majority stakeholder. The remaining 15% you will keep in a trust for Leo. This is non-negotiable. He stared at her dumbfounded. You'll ruin the company. The board will never accept it. The board will be told that you are stepping down for personal and health reasons, effective immediately, she countered. They will be told that you are handing the reins to your brilliant wife, the original mind behind the technology, to guide it into its next chapter. It's a good story. The media will love it. A powerful woman stepping out from the shadows to claim her legacy. And if I say no, he whispered. If you say no, Elena said, picking up the folio and Adam's report. Then copies of these documents go to the SEC, the IRS, the board of directors, and every major news outlet in the country. Isabella Rossi will testify that you coached her to lie about being an extortionist. My expert witness, Professor Adam Finch of MIT, will testify in open court how you committed systematic intellectual property fraud. By the time it's over, Aura Navigations will be a case study in corporate malfeasance. You will not only be broke, you will be in prison, and Leo will visit his father behind bars. Is that the legacy you want for him? It was checkmate. He stared at her, this woman he thought he knew, this woman he had so casually underestimated. He saw not the gracious hostess or the supportive wife, but a strategist more ruthless and brilliant than anyone he had ever faced in a boardroom. He had created his own destroyer. With a shuddering broken sigh, Richard Vance, the celebrated titan of tech, nodded his surrender. Okay, he said. Okay. The transfer of power was swift and brutal. Genevieve's legal team worked around the clock, drafting the unbreakable agreements. Richard, a ghost in his own life, signed every document they put in front of him, his hand trembling. He was a king, abdicating his stolen throne. Elena made one final call to Isabella. It's done, she said. He's going to issue a public statement that makes a vague reference to a personal indiscretion for which he takes full responsibility. Your name will not be mentioned. The accounts he tried to frame you with will be liquidated with a portion transferred to you. Consider it severance pay for the role he forced you to play. After that, I suggest you take your money, have a wonderful career as an artist, and never, ever let a powerful man make you feel small again. A choked sob of relief came from the other end of the line. Thank you, Isabella whispered. Elena simply hung up. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about closing a chapter. The public announcement sent shockwaves through the financial world.
I hope you enjoyed this thrilling journey. On a scale
visionary
of 1
Richard
to 10,
Vance
how would you
steps
rate
down
this story?
from Aura
Let me know in the
Navigations,
comments below.
citing
Your
personal
feedback inspires
reasons.
more epic tales.
Majority control, ceded to wife Elellanena Vance, revealed as a key architectural mind behind the company's foundational technology. The story was spun not as a hostile takeover, but as a seamless, powerful transition. A story of a woman finally taking her rightful place. It was a lie, of course, but it was a lie that served the truth. Richard disappeared from public life. He moved into a smaller apartment downtown, a man stripped of his empire and his identity. He saw Leo on weekends, a quiet, diminished figure who could no longer answer his son's questions about what it was like to be on top of the world. Elena, however, thrived. Stepping into the role of CEO of Aura Navigations felt less like a new job and more like a reclamation. The first thing she did was change the name. Aura was Richard's brand, built on illusion. She renamed the company Helios Dynamics, a nod to its true origin, to the brilliant, ambitious young woman she had once been. The initial board meetings were tense. The old guardmen loyal to Richard were skeptical. They saw her as a spurned wife on a power trip. Eleanor did not try to charm them. She did not try to win them over with platitudes. She won them over with competence. She walked into the boardroom for her first all-hands presentation, not with a speech, but with a blueprint. She laid out a new vision for the company, one that went beyond logistics and shipping. She unveiled her original dream using the Helios engine to design smarter, more sustainable, more humane cities. She presented a 10-year plan for Helios Urban, a new division dedicated to partnering with municipalities around the world. She spoke their language, the language of innovation, profit, and vision. But this vision was authentic. It was hers. The board, initially hostile, slowly began to see what Richard had seen all those years ago, a true visionary. By the end of the first quarter, the company's trajectory was already pointing higher than ever before. Her personal life was quieter but more authentic. The sprawling penthouse, once a symbol of her gilded cage, now felt like her castle. She redecorated, replacing the cold, minimalist aesthetic with warmth, color, and pieces of art that she loved. She hosted dinners not for social climbing, but for a close circle of friends, brilliant minds in science, art, and literature. One evening, months after the takeover, she was working late in her new office, Richard's old office, which she had completely redesigned. The dark wood was gone, replaced with light oak and glass. On the wall, where a portrait of Richard used to hang there, was now a massive abstract painting by a promising new artist named Isabella Rossi. She looked out the window at the glittering expanse of New York City, the same view Richard had once claimed as his own. But she saw it differently. She didn't see a conquest. She saw a complex, living system of light energy and human connection. She saw a challenge. Her life was not a fairy tale. The scars of Richard's betrayal remained a quiet reminder of the cost of her own naivety. The divorce was finalized, a quiet legal severing. But the pain no longer defined her. It had been a crucible, a fire that had burned away the illusion and forged her into the woman she was always meant to be. She wasn't Elellanena Vance, the wife of a titan. She wasn't Eleanor Peterson, the ghost of a past potential. She was simply Eleanor, the CEO of Helios Dynamics, a queen who had not inherited a kingdom, but had built one herself from the ashes of a spectacular lie. The woman on the jet in the sapphire pajamas had, in a strange and painful way, set her free. She had walked onto that plane to surprise her husband and had ended up finding herself. That moment on the jet could have been the end of Eleanor's story. It could have been a tale of heartbreak, humiliation, and a bitter divorce. But instead, a devastating betrayal became the catalyst for an incredible rebirth. She didn't just get even. She got everything. She reclaimed her past, her intellect, and her future, proving that sometimes the worst thing that can happen to you is the very thing that sets you free to become who you were always meant to be.
I hope you enjoyed this thrilling journey. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this story? Let me know in the comments below. Your feedback inspires more epic tales.